Okay. Good morning, everybody. I want to start with the question of really why we're here, why we're learning right now. It's a Yahrtzeit, or the Yahrtzeit was yesterday. So what's all this? Why are we getting together to learn? And I want to share something a little disturbing that happened this last week. On my news feed, I got this weird article about this guy in Florida who wanted to remember his uncle who passed away. So he took his skeleton and he made it into a guitar. He got it treated and made it into a guitar. Now, this is disturbing on many, many accounts. It's disturbing because it appeared on my news feed. So some type of algorithm thought that I'd be interested in this article. That's number one. I clicked on it, so I must have been right. But what's more disturbing is that somebody viewed that this is a good way to commemorate somebody, that to take the essence of their life, which was metal, which was hard rock, and to commemorate and make a guitar out of it was disturbing to me, because that's not what life is all about. And I want to share a story that happened with Rabbi Goldberg. Actually, when I first met him 3 years ago, the beginning when I came on Shlichut. So we had it was a teacher orientation. It was a teacher orientation, and at the orientation we had it was kind of like a speed meet the teacher thing. We all were in a little square, okay, and you had to sit. The inner circle stayed the same, and the outer circle moved around, and you had 2 minutes to sit down and talk with the teacher in front of you, get to know each other. If you maybe know the person, you get to know them a little better, and move on. And as I'm going from teacher to teacher, or staff member to staff member, what's my name? I grew up in this place. This is what I do at the school, blah, 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 small talk. And all of a sudden, I get to Rabbi Goldberg. Rabbi Goldberg's sitting across from me. I sit down, and he looks at me, and he says, oh, he grabs my hand, and he pulls me closer. He didn't say, hi, I'm Rabbi Goldberg. I grew up in this place. He immediately says, I got to share something with you on the parsha. And he starts telling me divrei Torah, and his face just lights up. And he's holding onto my hand, not letting me go, and just sharing this thought on the parsha. And then the person who's running the thing blows the whistle. Everybody gets up to move, and Rabbi Goldberg's holding onto my hand. He's not letting me go. He wants to finish the idea. He finishes the idea, and I move on. And that was the whole meet with Rabbi Goldberg. Because for Rabbi Goldberg, that's who he was. He wanted to share Torah with you. It didn't matter, where he grew up, what school he went to. I have a shot on Torah. I want to teach it to you. That's who I am. So I think it's very appropriate that the way that we're commemorating Rav Goldberg on his Yahrtzeit, who he was, is to learn Torah together, because that's what Rav Goldberg would have wanted, and that's who Rav Goldberg was. So with that, wanted to share, kind of discuss together some ideas about the afterlife. This is a shiur sponsored by the Rutman family, and we're very appreciative to their sponsorship. So there's a big what to do, the whole discussion in the Rishonim and the Achronim. Even nowadays, how do we make sense of what happens after life? We have all these. The Torah itself is very, very. Sorry, this is the wrong document. Okay, the Torah itself doesn't really say much, but in Chazal we have all these terms. We have Olam Haba, we have Tchiyat HaMeitim, we have Gan Eden, Gehenna. How do all of these work together? What is each one? So I wanted to discuss that and learn that sugya together with all of you. What I think we're going to see is that there are basically more or less two different paradigms on how to make sense of all of these things. And they're night and day from each other. So let's get started. So what is Olam Haba? We'll see the Rambam. The Rambam, as head of the rationalists, has a very unique way of looking at all of these things. It's not just him; it's also Sefer Ikarim. And the Rambam says like this. This is from Hilchot Shuvah. The good that is hidden for the righteous is the life of the world to come. This will be life which is not accompanied by death and good, which is not accompanied by evil. The reward of the righteous is that they will merit this pleasure and take part in this good. In the world to come, there is no body or physical form, only the souls of the righteous alone, without a body like the ministering angels. Since there is no physical form, there's neither eating, drinking, nor any other bodily functions of this world like sitting, standing, sleeping, sadness, laughter, and the like. Thus the sages have of the previous ages declared, in the world to come, there is neither eating or drinking. Rather, all righteous will sit with their crowns on their heads and delight in the radiance of the divine presence. The Rambam sets forth that Olam Haba is basically this spiritual world where there's absolutely no physicality. It's just soul. There's no physical pleasures, there's no eating, there's no nothing. Since the life is not accompanied by death, for death it is an event associated with the body alone, and in this realm there is no body, it is called the bond of life. As it says, and the soul of my master will be bound up in the bonds of life. This is the reward above, which there is no higher reward, and the good beyond, which there can be no other good. This was the good desired by all the prophets. Okay, so it's just this abstract world of just spirit. No physicality. Unless you think lightly of this good, i.e. the world to come, imagining that the word for the mitzvahs and for a person completing the paths of truth is for him to eat and drink good foods, wear garments of linen and lace, dwell in ivory palaces, use utensils of gold and silver, or other similar ideas as conceived by the foolish, decadent Arabs who are flooded with lewdness. We know what they believe a martyr gets in the world to come. So he says that's nonsense, that's foolishness. In contrast, the sages of men of knowledge know that all these matters are vain and empty things, without any purpose. They are only considered of great benefit to us in this world because we possess a body in physical form. Namely, all physicality, it's just because we're in a body in this world. We only have desires and ta'ava for the things, a nice piece of steak, a nice house, whatever it is, because we're currently in a body. But that's not in essence who we are. All these matters are needs of the body. The soul only desires them and lusts for them because of the needs of the body, so that its desires will be fulfilled and its health maintained. In a situation where there is no body, all of these matters will be nullified. Namely, you won't have a desire for these anymore. There is no way in this world to grasp and comprehend the ultimate good which the souls will experience in the world to come. We only know bodily good, and that is what we desire. However, that ultimate good is overwhelmingly great and cannot be compared to the good of the world except in metaphoric sense. Namely, all the metaphors, which we're going to touch upon some of them, they talk about the physicality that there's going to be in the world to come. It's just a metaphor because we who live in a physical body, we only know that type of experience. And so therefore we can't imagine or relate to anything that's beyond that. The sages did not use the expressions the world to come with the intention implying, and this is an important point here, implying that the realm does not exist at the present, right? Meaning, Reuven's Olam Haba and Shimon's Olam Haba, they all happen when? Right? They all happen immediately after that person dies. A person dies and his soul goes to Olam Haba. So there's this world going on now in which we all live, and then there's Olam Haba, which happens immediately after a person's death, which is in a sense simultaneously happening, if you can say such a thing, in a realm that is not bound by time, but it's happening right now as well. So it's not that it doesn't exist at the present realm, which will be destroyed, and then the realm will come into being. It's not like this world has to end, and then there's going to be an Olam Haba. Rather, the world to come exists and is present, as is implied by the Tehillim, as it is said. Okay. How great is the good that you have hidden, which you have made. It is only called the world to come. So why is it called Olam Haba? Why is it called the world to come? Because that life comes to a man after the life in this world in which we exist as souls enclosed in bodies. The realm of existence is present to all men at first. So I think it's a pretty straightforward shot, pretty simple understanding of what Olam Haba is, and maybe one that we all grew up with and had in the back of our minds, perhaps. But not all of the Rishonim felt this way. Right? For instance, the Ramban in Torat Or Chaim, the Ramban, a contemporary of the Rambam, in his Sha'ar Gmul is a Torat Or Chaim is basically a work in halacha, but Sha'ar Gmul is an essay in a very, very long chapter which deals with all of these issues that we're going to be talking about today. Very, very long. So throughout this year we'll have tidbits here and there. So the Ramban says completely opposite. He says Olam Haba hu Olam Haschar Lo'otan HaSha'Kadosh Baruch Hu Mechayei B'Tchiyat HaMeitim. What's Olam Haba? It is something that's going to happen. This is a reward after Tchiyat HaMeitim. Ve'eno Olam HaNeshamot Shekara'anu Oto Gan Eden. This is not Gan Eden. Gan Eden is for the souls. We'll talk about what Gan Eden is. But there's Gan Eden, and then there's going to be this Tchiyat HaMeitim, where there's resurrection of the dead, and that is Olam Haba. Right? Olam HaTchiyahu. Tchiyat HaMeitim is the first stage that happens before Olam Haba. So in the eyes of the Ramban, Olam Haba is actually very physical, right? There's going to be Tchiyat HaMeitim. We're going to have bodies. Everything's going to be all good. We'll be eating cake or pitzochim like some of our boys here are eating. It's going to be wonderful, right? But physicality, very, very different from that of the Rambam. Now, where does this machloket stem from? Like, where do they get this from? Because it doesn't say too much in Chazal. It doesn't say anything in the Torah. So why would the Rambam say something that is so ethereal, so spiritual and detached from any physicality? And the Ramban take an approach which is no, it's about the goof now in its prime form after Tchiyat HaMeitim. So interesting, much has to do with how they view the statements of Chazal, because within Chazal, within the Gemara itself, there are many statements that refer to Olam Haba as being something physical, right? There's we'll see the Rambam quote some of them later, but we're going to sit there at this big Su'uda, right? We're going to have, someone asked me in one of my classes the other day if the Leviathan is kosher, right? This big fish that was created. Are we going to, because we're eating it at Olam Haba, right? So is it kosher? Are we really eating a fish there? If there's a fish, if you're just a spirit, where's the fish? There's in Gemara Brachos talks about, there's a machloket, a agarata of who's going to have the kosher bracha at Birkat HaMazon in Olam Haba. Right, so all these things talk about, we're going to have these crowns on our heads. All of these things sound like there's a physicality to it. So how do we make sense of all these agata? So the Rambam actually, in his Hakdama L'Perek HaChelek, where he speaks about much of these things, he says there are three different groups of people of how to approach agarata and Chazal. Okay, the first group are those that everything that Chazal say, every word of it is to be taken literal. It doesn't match with the reality. It doesn't match with science. It doesn't match with physics. Physics is wrong. Science is wrong. Chazal said it, so then you have to take it literally. The Ramban, I'll say it outside. The Ramban says these people they think they're being tzaddikim, but they're actually, it's a disgrace to Torah, because they're taking the words of Chazal and they're making it into jokes. They're making it into something, making a light of it. Not light of it, they're making it into just nonsense. So he says these people are having a disgrace to Torah. The second group of people, which he says is also a very big group, they also understand the words of Chazal, all of these agarata, as to be literal, but they take the opposite approach. They say, obviously it's not true because it goes against the laws of nature, right? And he says this group is even worse. Why? Because they're making fun of Chazal. They say, oh, look what Chazal say. They say there's going to be this and there's going to be that. That doesn't make any sense. How could such a thing be? Chazal are just a bunch of clowns. And this group also is Vihikat Arurav. This is a cursed group because they make light of words of the chachamim. And then comes the third group. And the Rambam says the third one, Hakat HaShlishi, Him Chai Hashem Ma'atim Me'ad Me'od Ad She'en Ranu L'Krotam Kat. These are a few individuals. You can't even call them a group of people. And they understand that what? The words of Chazal and Agarata, they're a mashal, they're a metaphor. Chazal are trying to tell us something very, very deep, and they're using analogy and story to go ahead and give us that idea, because sometimes that's the best and in a sense the only way to have to translate and transfer deep ideas. It has to be through analogy, it has to be through metaphor. And if we misunderstand what they're saying, either we take it literally, then we miss the whole point, and we made light of Chazal. In that sense, the Rambam says we have to look at the words of Chazal and we have to say, does this match reality, i.e. the laws of nature? If it doesn't match the laws of nature, then we should not take it literally, and we should take it as a metaphor and try to understand what the metaphor is about. But the Ramban, the Ravid, and others, a lot of other Rishonim say, no, if Chazal said something, then that's what they meant. And it should be taken literally. Why? Well, you don't think Hashem could do miracles? And this actually, how to look at the words of Chazal, touches on a much deeper machloket in terms of how do you view Hashem's interaction and relationship with the laws of nature, Right? The Ramban and others say that Hashem changes the laws of nature all the time. Everything is a miracle. The famous Ramban in Parsha's Bo. Everything's a miracle, and Hashem does this. He could do this tomorrow without the blink of an eye, and it doesn't bother him. But the Rambam says, no, Hashem set the laws of nature and does not want to go ahead and change the laws of nature just stam, without any specific reason. And therefore, if any words of Chazal don't say something which doesn't match, they describe something which doesn't match the laws of nature, it should be understood as an analogy. And the Ramban says this back into Hilchot Tshuva. He says this explicitly. He goes ahead and he takes all these analogies and he says it's all metaphorical. From that statement, it is clear that there is no body, for there is no eating nor drinking. Consequently, the statements, the righteous sit, must be interpreted metaphorically, i.e., the righteous exist there without work or labor. Similarly, the phrase, their crowns on their head, also metaphor, implying that they will possess the knowledge that they grasped, which allowed them to merit the life of the world to come. This will be their crown. All metaphorical. What is meant by the expression, delight in the radiance of the divine presence, that they will comprehend the truth of godliness, which they cannot grasp while in the dark and humble body. The sages refer to this good which is prepared for the righteous with the metaphor, the feast, as we mentioned. There's this huge feast that's going to happen. We're going to Yahrtzeit, and there's going to be a whole who's going to get the kosher bracha? Is it going to be Avram? Is it going to be David? Generally is referred to with the terms to world to come. Everything is an analogy. Many of the Rishonim did not like the Rambam's points on this. Here you see the Ravid. The Ravid comments there, the Hasagas HaRavid. Many people don't know this, but the Ravid was actually, at the time of the Rambam, he was the Gadol Hador. He was much greater than the Rambam. Right? They sent, what happened was, they sent the Mishnah Torah. The Rambam wrote it. He was a young man. He was finished it in the early 40s, wrote it in his 30s. They sent it to the Ravid to go ahead and give his opinion. What do you think of this book? And so the Ravid went ahead and he wrote his commentary on it, saying, I disagree with that. That doesn't make any sense. All this and that and the other. And so here's a great example of where the Ravid doesn't have any problem picking a fight with the Rambam. And he quotes the Rambam saying, that the rabbis called all of this a metaphor, referring to the Suda that's mentioned in Masechet Bracha. So Amar Avraham, the Ravid says, Im zu hi Suda, in kan kosher bracha. Well, this is a Suda's metaphor, so there's no kosher bracha. Come on. V'tov haita lo hashtika. The Rambam should have kept his mouth shut. Right? Put a cork in it. That is what the Ravid has to say. Meaning the Ravid is taking this thing to be very literal. That Olam Haba is, there's going to be a Suda, it's going to be after Tchiyat HaMeitim, like the Ramban says. This machloket, whether there's going to be Olam HaNeshamot, and that's Olam Haba, or Olam Haba is, the final destination is going to be this Tchiyat HaMeitim, and then we're all in this Olam Haba, in this world with physical bodies, really touches on a much more important machloket, which is what is the essence of a human being? Who are we? What are we? So the Ramban, who is a little more inclined to the mystical view, views the human being as basically physicality. Right? We are from Adama, but we also have the breath of God that's breathed into us. We are both physical and spiritual at the same time. And the goal of man is to take that physicality and to raise it up in its spirituality, to have the physical and the spiritual work together. If that's the case, it makes sense. It's understandable how the world to come, right? The ultimate good will be this complete perfection, in which you have the physical and the spiritual working hand in hand together. But the Rambam does not look kindly upon physicality in general. Here you have in Mor Nevuchim, Rambam says like this: the general object of the law is twofold, i.e. the Torah. The Torah has two objectives, but in this world. Number one, the well-being of the soul, spiritual perfection, in which the Rambam's eyes is also intellectual perfection, as well as the well-being of the body. We also have to go ahead and prepare ourselves and fix ourselves physically. The well-being of the soul is promoted by correct opinions communicated to the people according to their capacity. So how does a person fix his soul? He has proper philosophy on life. He understands what it means that God is one. He understands that avodah zarah is bad. He understands all of the philosophical truths which are meant to be gleaned from the mitzvot, right? but he has to contemplate that. He has to come to those conclusions. So we have the physical perfection and we have the spiritual / intellectual perfection. Of these two objects, the one, the well-being of the soul, or the communication of correct opinion, comes undoubtedly first in rank. Right? Most important is the perfection of the soul, of the intellect. But the other well-being of the body, the government of the state, and the establishment of the best possible relationships among man is interior in nature and time. If you look at most of the Torah is laws about how to have a society. Don't steal, set up a beit din. Right? Don't do this to your neighbor. You should do this, give tzedakah. All of these, says the Rambam, that is so you have a proper working society. You need a proper working society. In order, this is just a prerequisite, in order that you can get to the greater goal, which is the perfection of the mind. If we're in the middle of a war and there's famine or a pandemic going on, so it's very hard to sit and think about God, to think about philosophy, to think about the greater truths. So we need, so to speak, peace and shalom within the physical world, in which many of the laws of the Torah are there to go ahead and set up for us, in order that we can get to this more spiritual perfection. The second perfection of man consists in his becoming an actually intelligent being, right? An active sechel hapoel, right? It's an active intellect. He knows about the things in existence as all that a person perfectly developed and capable of his knowing. So the best that a person was given in terms of his ability to understand something intellectually, that's the level they will achieve in this world. The second perfection certainly does not include any action or good contact, but only knowledge. It's just about what you got up here. It is clear that the second and superior kind of perfection can only be attained when the first perfection has been acquired. For a person that is suffering from great hunger or thirst, heat or cold, cannot grasp an idea, even if communicated by others, much less can he arrive at his own reasoning. But when a person is in possession of the first perfection, then he may possibly acquire the second perfection, which is undoubtedly a superior kind and is alone the source of eternal life. What gets you to Olam Haba? What the intellectual truths and philosophies that you've achieved, not your actions, says the Rambam. Okay, so if that's what man is, right? Man is basically, our point of us being here is to get to this philosophical, intellectual correctness, and the body is basically what holds us down, and we need to, so to speak, appease the body and keep it, comfortable in order that we can get to it. Why in the world to come would I need a body? For what purpose? It was just holding me down this whole time, right? So in a sense, leaving this world is letting go of that and allowing the active intellect to go ahead and reach its potential. Okay, so what we saw now until this point was two views of what Olam Haba is. Olam Haba is a world that everybody, respectively, goes to after they die. It's a world of neshamot, purely spiritual. Or, says the Ramban, Olam Haba is a world that nobody has gotten to yet, because it's a world that's going to come at the end of time, after the resurrection, after Tchiyat HaMeitim, in which the soul and the body are going to come back together and reach a level of perfection. If that's the case, so what's Gan Eden, right? Because I'll talk about this place, Gan Eden. What's that all about? So the Ramban, in some of the same piece, he says, let's switch. Right, Olam Haba, that's what we want to get to. That's the greatest reward. The reward which comes before that, this is what a person has as soon as he dies, according to the Ramban. Hu Gan Eden. This is what we call Gan Eden. Right, there's Gan Eden and there's Gehenna. This is kind of like a middle ground. It's a waiting room. When you go to a doctor's office, there's a waiting room there. This is the waiting room where your soul's kind of like waiting around for everyone else to die or whatever, in order that there could be Tchiyat HaMeitim and we get to the world to come. Right? So the question is like, what type of waiting room do you want to go to? Where there's like a nice buffet of like food there and you're waiting comfortably, or like where somebody accidentally put the heat on like 150 degrees Celsius and now you have to wait in that room until Tchiyat HaMeitim. But that's all it is. It's a waiting room. Interestingly, the tefillah that we have, a prayer for the niftar of Kel Mel Rachamim, that we say on Yahrtzeit and on Yom Kippur, it mentions this idea of Gan Eden, right? Gan Eden tiyeh menuchato. There's a prayer that the soul should have rest in Gan Eden. Now it's interesting because that only really works for the Ramban's understanding of Gan Eden, that's a place where the soul is currently, and therefore it needs menucha. The Rambam, again in his Akdama L'Perek HaChelek in Sanhedrin, on the Mishnayot, he says Gan Eden, it's just a garden. It's just like a really nice place, and it's in this world. It's physical, right? And like one day we'll find it, and there'll be like nice rivers and nice trees there with like pretty birds, and there might be herbs that you can like make medicine of it. That's all. Nothing really too relevant. It's a really nice garden. I don't know, maybe Hawaii. I don't know. A lot. I don't know. Someplace in the world. It already exists. Is there any significance to it in terms of the trajectory of a human soul? No. It's just a garden. Really nice. Maybe there's a bench there, a little fountain. Who knows? Right? He doesn't give too much thought to it. Definitely has nothing to do with the soul. What's Gehenim? So says the Ramban. Ha'onesh hazeh shel Gehenim miyad hugba la'adam achar mita tekef sha'rasha meit nafsho mitkasheret b'gal ha'esh. After a Rasha dies, so he doesn't get to go to Gan Eden and wait there. He gets to go to Gehenim. Gehenim is the place where his soul will burn, and it will burn for a long time until it is become cured or there's Tchiyat HaMeitim. According to the Rambam, what's Gehenim? So the Rambam says, basically, it's also in this world, right? This is basically a punishment that's going to happen to the Rishayim, and they're going to be burnt also. I don't know, maybe there'll be some atomic bomb or something like that, or they'll get really bad fever. There's going to be a bad punishment for the Rishayim, but it's in this world. Just like Gan Eden is in this world, so too Gehenim is in this world. Nothing spiritual in nature whatsoever. So what then is the ultimate punishment for the Rishayim? Like, what is it? If Gan Eden, if Olam Haba is the world of the soul, where a person can connect and fully to God, so then what is the ultimate punishment for Rishayim? So the Rambam says, by the way, if anybody has questions or comments throughout, this is not like, please feel free, just shout it out. So Rambam says in Hilchot Tshuva, the reward of the righteous is that they will merit the pleasure and take part in this good, everything that we mentioned above. The retribution of the wicked is that they're not going to merit this life. Rather, they're going to be cut off and die. Whoever does not merit this life is truly dead and will not live forever. Rather, he will be cut off in his wickedness and perish as a beast. Right? I was growing up, all dogs go to heaven. Not true, says the Rambam. Dogs don't go to heaven. Dogs die, and that's it. Sorry for anybody who has a pet that died recently. They don't go to heaven. Okay? It's just, they die like a beast. They can't go to heaven. Why can't they go to heaven? Because what is heaven? What is Olam Haba? It's a place of reaching philosophical truths, and that your soul now connects to that, connects to God. An animal can't do that. And you know who else can't do that? A human being who lived his life like an animal. If you're just chasing materialism and bodily pleasures, so then you haven't reached any intellectual and spiritual achievements, and therefore you die like the beast you lived your life as. This is the intent of the meaning of the term karet in the Torah, as it states, the soul shall surely be cut off. The oral tradition explains hikaret means to be cut off in this world, and tikaret to be cut off in the world to come. After these souls become separated from the bodies in this world, they will not merit the life of the world to come. Rather, even in the world to come, they will be cut off. All of the synonyms for nullification and destructions are used to refer to it as the ultimate nullification after which there is no reward, no renewal, and the ultimate loss which can never be recovered. Says the Rambam, what happens to a Rasha after he dies? Nothing. He just dies. He just goes into the ground and his soul just disappears. Yeah, Mendy, go for it.
So just a quick question. So like a lot of people today might be considered Tinok Shanishma because they didn't grow up with any education or they didn't know they were Jewish or anything, and yet they lived their life like what you'd call, I guess, a dog or an animal. So what category do those people fall into? How do we deal with them? Like what happens to them?
Excellent question. That's an excellent question, Mendy. The Rambam is an elitist, right? It's definitely not to the fault of anybody who didn't know. And in a sense, let's say somebody just doesn't have the intellectual capabilities of reaching these philosophical truths that the Rambam's talking about. Did that person do anything wrong? Those were the talents that God gave him. Those were the genetics. But it sounds like from the Rambam, yeah, it's tough. That's just how it's going to be. There's no punishment. It's just not, they don't get the natural outcome. Right? That's all it is. It's a natural consequence of reaching these philosophical truths and this spiritual understanding, is that when you're detached from your body, so your soul just attaches to what it already has become. It's reached a level, that's what it is, and will continue to exist on that level, just with connecting to God. So it sounds like a tinuk shenishba, someone who just didn't know any better. Yeah, pretty tough. In general, the Rambam's elitist view of Judaism, puts the unique few up there, and everybody else not a comfortable thought. But excellent question. Okay. Now, a question that probably bothers many people. Why is none of this mentioned in the Torah? Like, the Torah doesn't have any problems going on and telling me about how Eliezer came and found Rivka and retelling of the story and all of these other things and the genealogy of Esav, but like, Olam Haba seems like a pretty important thing to leave out. Why is it not mentioned in the Torah? Anybody having a thought? Okay, so there are a lot of answers that are given in terms of historical answers, in terms of understanding of where Am Yisrael was, who they were, on an intellectual and spiritual level when the Torah was given. But I wanna focus on really there are two answers that I want to focus on, and one is of the Sefer Ikarim. So the Sefer Ikarim, he explains, and this is interesting to think about, especially in our generation. If you look at the Torah is really is not a document for individuals. It's a document for a nation. And we have to preface, there are many rewards and punishments that are in the Torah for this world, physical, right? We say it in Shema, there's going to be rain, there's going to be good economics, all of that. So it's not like there isn't this idea of reward and punishment in the Torah. There is, but it's all talking about physical reward in this world. So Sefer Ikarim he explains that the Torah was given to a nation, and it's about us fulfilling a certain destiny as a nation. And so therefore it only talks about national reward. There's going to be peace, there's going to be rain, there's going to be good economics, there's going to be industry, there's not going to be poverty. All of these things are on a national level. But as individuals of Olam Haba, what does that have to do with the nation? That's an individual thing that comes. That's not what the Torah is about. Another interesting answer of that of the Barmanel, based on the Rambam, right? The idea that the Rambam explains in terms of the reward that's mentioned in this world, of the physical reward. The Rambam says it's not really as a reward as much as a God kind of helping you out. Namely, that if you're a person who's going to go ahead and live the life of the Torah, and help get these values out into the world, be an Or LaGoyim, right? Be a model, an example to everybody else. So Hashem is going to go ahead and make it easier for you to do this by not making you poor, by not making you sick and poverty and all of that stuff. Right? Now you'll more be able to go ahead and teach Torah and learn Torah and do all these things. But it's not a reward. It's just, here, let me help you go ahead and do it. I'll fund the project, so to speak. And the reason is because we should never be doing things for reward. That's not why these things are mentioned. Do them so you get rain. No, you shouldn't do them so you get rain. But you should know if you do them, you will get rain, and I'll help you along the way. Had the Torah talked about real reward, Olam Haba, so then it would all be lo lishma. It would be the only reason we're doing it is for the reward, i.e. the reward at the end of the day. And that's not why we should be doing things. We should be doing things because it's the truth. We should be doing things because that's the right thing to do. That's how we should be living our lives. And so therefore, the Torah doesn't get involved with reward and punishment on any level. One more interesting point, and this will bring us, I think, to the crux of it, is the Maharal. So the Maharal explains like this. The Torah itself, what's the purpose of the Torah in this world? So the Maharal explains, we'll say it outside, is to go ahead and fix this world. It's all about this world. How can we make this world a better place? How can we make a better society? How can we make a better family dynamics, better interaction between people, a better justice system? How can we have people who are more mentally healthy? All of these things the Torah deals with. So it gives us guidelines in terms of how to do that. But in terms of something, olam haba, something that's not connected to this world, so prophecy doesn't say anything about that. Not prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu as is in the Torah, and not any of the prophets afterwards. It doesn't talk about olam haba. And I want to say this one point. The Gra takes this further. The Gra explains, you know why the Torah doesn't say anything about olam haba? Because who cares? Because it's not what it's about. It's not why we're doing anything. Why should the Torah talk about that? The point of life is this world, right? To make this world a better place, not what comes after. That may happen, may not happen, irrelevant. Point is, it will happen, but the point is that's this world. We'll come to back to that point. Okay, so where does Tchiyat HaMeitim fit in? Right, for the Ramban, I think the trajectory of the human soul is pretty clear. Right, we're in this world, then a person dies, he either goes to Gehenna, the waiting room of Gehenna, or Gan Eden, and then Tchiyat HaMeitim is the time period, an event that happens, which brings us into the next stage of Olam Haba. And here the Ramban explains. Right, Olam Haba, hu Olam Haschal. We read this is from last time. Olam Haba is not the world of just the souls. There's going to be Mashiach, there's going to be Tchiyat HaMeitim, that is a stage in the trajectory, and then there's going to be Olam Haba. So the Ramban, it works out nicely. But for the Rambam, how do you make sense of this? Because for the Rambam, why should there be Tchiyat HaMeitim at all? What is Tchiyat HaMeitim? After this world, you just go straight to Olam Haba. Why would there be any Tchiyat HaMeitim? So the Rambam actually got into a lot of heat for this, because there were many who claimed that he didn't believe in Tchiyat HaMeitim, which is a little weird, because Tchiyat HaMeitim, resurrection of the dead, is one of his 13 principles of faith. So why would he put it as one of the 13 principles of faith and then not believe in it? In any case, the Rambam defends himself. The reason that people thought that is because he doesn't write a lot about it at all in his writings, and therefore afterwards he actually had to write a whole article, a whole response, a rebuttal to the claims that he doesn't believe it, and that was the Ma'amar Tchiyat HaMeitim. But first, what does the Rambam say about it in Perek HaChelek? Tchiyat HaMeitim hu yisod mi-yisodei Moshe Rabbeinu. It's one of the principles of faith. De'ein dat lo dvekut bedat yudit l'mi she'lo ya'amin zeh. You don't believe in this, then you're a heretic. Aval hu litzadikim, but you should know that not everybody's resurrected. Some people will be resurrected. Some tzadikim, I don't know, Moshe, Aaron, I don't know, Avram. Majority of people, they won't be resurrected. And furthermore, v'da ki adam yesh lo lamut be'echrech v'yipared v'yeshuv lama shurkav mimenu. After the resurrection of the dead, you know what's going to happen? People are going to die again. What, you think they're going to live forever? You can't live forever. Anything which is physical must die. Those are the laws of nature. And if you're the Rambam, so things have to stick to the laws of nature. So there's going to be a resurrection of some people. I don't know who they are going to be. And then they're going to die again. Now, then what's the whole point of it? Why would you have resurrection of the dead? Right? Like, for what? So the Rambam in his rebuttal in Ma'amar Tchiyat HaMeitim, it's much longer than this piece, but he basically explains, I'll say it outside, that it's a one-time event, and the truth is, the point of the belief, why it's a fundamental belief, is that it could happen. right? That you believe, yeah, there could even be a Tchiat HaMeitim. God can even do that. I believe God can do that. Will he do that? Maybe. Show off his powers, big flex, right? But does it have any importance? No. No real importance. Now, the interesting thing, and the problem really for the Rambam is you have this, you can imagine, Moshe Rabbeinu is up there and he's Olam Haba. He's like, wow, this is great. No body, no food. I'm just me and God chilling. And then all of a sudden, God wants to flex. So he's like, Moshe, I need to borrow your soul for just 1 second. I'm going to throw you back down on earth. Right? And Moshe wakes up and he's alive again. And he's walking around and he's like, oh my God, I'm here again. We did this. I got 120 years in this world. Why are you throwing me back down on earth? It seems like problematic. Why would God do that to the tzaddikim, to take them out of Olam Haba and throw them into this world in a physical body when that's the least thing that they want? So becomes a problematic in that respect. Okay. The Messianic era. Mashiach, where does Mashiach fit in all this? What's this all about? So the truth is there's a machlok, a very important machlok in the Gemara Brachot about this. Machlok is talking about all of the wonderful physical things that the Nevi'im talk about. Right? What is that referring to? What era is that referring to? So Gemara says like this. Rechia Bar Abba says in the name of Yochanan, Kol Nevi'im Kulan Lo Niv'u Ela Limot Mashiach. All of that great stuff they're talking about, where money's growing off of the trees, and the wolf and the lamb are going to lie together, and they're not going to eat each other. All of that, that's talking about Yom Mashiach. It's going to be this magical, awesome time. But Shmuel says, "Ein ben olam hazeh limot Mashiach ela shibud malchut bilvad." What are you talking about? Yom Mashiach? You think it's going to be magical? The only difference between now and the days of Mashiach is just going to be whether we have our own, our own kingship, we have our own government, or there's no persecution, or we're free to, do what we want. Right? As he says, and this is an important point, Ki lo yechdal, the pasuk says, lo yechdal evyon mikarav haaretz. Because they say there will always be poor people. Meaning, even in the times of Mashiach, there's going to be poor people. There's going to be poverty. There's going to be poverty. There's going to be war. There's going to be all the issues that we have in Yemot Mashiach. But it's going to be on our own land and with our own rules. Okay. So, how do we paskin? We paskin like Rabbi Bar Abba, or we paskin like Shmuel? So it's interesting. You look at the Rambam. The Rambam says like this. This is in Hilchos Malachim in the Mishnah Torah. So the King Messiah will arise and reestablish the monarchy of David as it was in former times. He will build the sanctuary and gather in the dispersed of Israel. All of the earlier statutes will be restored as they once were. Sacrifices will be offered. We're going to have a Beit HaMikdash. We're going to have Shemitah and Yovel years as the commandments in the Torah. And anyone who does not believe in him, or who does not anticipate his coming, not only denies the prophets, but also the Torah and Moses, our teacher. So believing in Yemot Mashiach is an important thing. It should not occur to you that the Mashiach, Melech Mashiach, must bring wondrous signs or perform miracles or invert new things or revive the dead or anything like those fools say. It is not so. Why? His proof. For Rabbi Akiva, one of the wisest of the sages, so Rabbi Akiva thought who? He thought that Bar Kochva was Mashiach. What was Bar Kochva? Bar Kochva, some years after the destruction of the Second Temple, so there was a revolt against the Romans. And Bar Kochva was heading it, and he was trying to go ahead and restore sovereignty to Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. And Rabbi Akiva said, yeah, let's go, let's do this. This is the Mashiach, Melech Mashiach. But what happened? There was no miracles. It was just a war. But nonetheless, you see that Rabbi Akiva thought he was Mashiach, even though there was no miracles, even though nothing miraculous was happening. It was just natural. Now, in the end, he was a Mashiach. Why? Because Bar Kochva died and the revolt failed. Now, if a king should arise from the house of David who was versed in the Torah and engaged in the commandments as did David, his forefather, in accordance with both the written and the oral Torah, and he enjoins all of Israel to follow in his ways and encourage them to repair the breaches, and he fights the wars of God, then he becomes the Mashiach, right? You get all the checks on your list, you check off all the boxes, you get a little Mashiach to, hello, my name is Mashiach, okay? If it succeeds in the efforts and defeats the enemies around and builds the sanctuary in its proper place and gathers the dispersed of Israel, he is definitely the Mashiach. But if he does not succeed in these manners or is killed, we will know that he was not the one the Torah promised. Rather, he's merely considered like another exemplary and qualified king in the house of David who has died. We give him a big pat on the back, Yasher Koach, but he's not the Mashiach. Now, what happens after Mashiach does come? It should not occur to you that during the days of Mashiach, a single thing from the ways of the world will be canceled, nor will there be something novel in the creation. Rather, the world will continue in its customary ways. No miracles. It's just going to be the way that it was. So how does he understand all of the prophecies? The wolf will lie with the sheep and the leopard shall lie with the kid. It is a riddle. It's an analogy. The substance of the matter is that Israel will dwell in safety, and the wicked of the world who are compared to the wolves and tigers, as it sells a wolf from the desert. Okay, they're the wolves, we're the kid, we're the lamb. So there's going to be peace, right? The nations of the world are not going to bother us. There's just going to be peace and war. So if I stopped here, who would you say the Rambam is paskening like? Mashiach is going to come. There's going to be no miracles. Everything, all of these fanciful prophecies are all analogies. So who's the Rambam paskening like? Is he paskening like Rabbi Chia or Shmuel? What do you guys think? Call it out.
Shmuel.
Shmuel. Why Shmuel?
Everything's going to be natural.
So everything's going to be natural, right? Right? That's what it seems at first glance. And if you stopped here, I would agree with you. The issue is the Rambam continues. Right? He even quotes Shmuel. Our sages have said that there's no difference between this world and the days of Mashiach, except our subservience to the kingdoms of the world alone. The sages and the prophets did not long for the days of Mashiach because they wanted to rule the world, or because they wanted to have dominion over the non-Jews, or because they wanted the nations to exalt them, or because they wanted to eat, drink, and be merry. Nonsense. That's not why they wanted it. Rather, they desired this so that they would have time for Torah and its wisdom. And there would be no one who would oppress them or force them to be idle from Torah. This, in order that they merit the world to come, as it explains regarding the laws of repentance. Namely, what is the point of Mashiach coming for us? So that we can sit and we don't have to run away from pogroms and we don't have to, beg for food. That we'll have just a clear mind where we can sit and learn Torah. We can sit and philosophize on the deeper truths of life. In a certain respects, that's kind of exciting because I don't know if you want to say that we're at the beginning, Halta de Gula, or whatever we are, Mashiach. I mean, all of us can sit more or less and learn. We can, you want to learn Torah, you can go online and you can learn Torah. You can go to all of these websites, VBM, YU Torah, Sefaria, you name it, Chabad.org, you name it, it's all in front of you. And nothing is stopping any of us from learning it. Right? You want to learn philosophy? Go to Crash Course and see the Green Brothers and learn a little bit about philosophy. Right? There's nothing is stopping us. We're not living in poverty. We're not living with pogroms. We're not living in persecution. So in a sense, we have a little bit of that Yemot HaMashiach that the sages for generations, for centuries have longed for. We have it today. Now here's the last paragraph of the Rambam. And at that time, there will be no famines, no wars, no envy, and no competition. For the good will be very pervasive. And all the delicacies will be readily available as is dust. Right? You'll have little, Lindt chocolates growing from the tree, kosher, with no U, C-O-R-A in it. The world will be only be engaged in knowing God. Then there will be very wise people who understand the deep sealed manners. Who's the Rambam paskening like? What does the Rambam say is going to be here? There's not going to be any war or poverty or hunger. The problem is Shmuel says explicitly that there's going to be poverty. Right? So the Rambam, it seems, the Malach Mishnah explains like this, is that the Rambam's borrowing the phrase of Shmuel, but he really posits like Rav Chia bar Abba. It's going to be this magical time. But the thing is, how is this miraculous time going to happen? It's going to happen naturally. right? Mashiach is going to come naturally. And all the good that they envisioned of no poverty, of being able to sit and learn, it's all going to happen naturally. Society is going to develop in which these things are taken care of, where we're not at war with each other, where there's peace amongst the nations, where there isn't poverty because our economic system is strong enough and where literally you can go to the store, you don't have to work your field, you can go to No Frills and buy a loaf of bread for $2, right? Which is bupkas. You think of the time of the Rambam, all that $2, I can get a loaf of bread. You know how much work needs to go into make a loaf of bread? But it's literally, kind of, almost in a sense, growing from the trees. Anything you want. It happens in a natural sense. So he paskins like Rav Chia Bar Abba, but in line with the Rambam's general philosophy on how things happen, it happens in a non-miraculous way, in a natural way. Okay. What we have here then is basically, I think, more or less, two very distinct paradigms and worldviews of what's going to happen. Right? For the Rambam, a very rationalist, that everything is happening naturally. We're in this world. We're basically a soul trapped in a human body, and our goal in this world is just to perfect our intellect, just to perfect our spiritual side. Gehenna and Gan Eden are in this world, a nice garden and a really hot summer day in Nevada or something like that. Right? That's what those two are. After a person, Yemot HaMashiach is going to be an era in which people can now, with the greatness of Yemot HaMashiach, is that people they can get wisdom. It's at their fingertips. They can go online and get any wisdom they want, just like that, without persecution, without being chased down, and they can put on tefillin and walk on the streets of Yerushalayim with tefillin on their heads and talis on their back, and nobody will say mum. All right? After all that, a person has reached this perfection, this spiritual and intellectual perfection. So then what happens? A person dies, and their soul goes to the world of the souls and connects with God, and everything reaps the benefit of everything that they accomplished in that world. A person who was a Rasha just doesn't get that because he hasn't reached it. Right? According to the Ramban, who we are in this world is a soul and a body together. And our objective, what the Torah wants for us, is to bring that perfection of the synthesis between body and soul. And Olam Haba is going to be basically Tchiat HaMeitim, and the final good is when we live that ideal reality, where there's perfection, a perfect synthesis between body and soul. And Gan Eden and Gehenna are just waiting rooms until that happens. When I think about, Rav Goldberg, Baruch Hashem, I have been in many Batei Midrashot in my life, and I have been surrounded by many Rabbanim and talmidim chachamim. There's something very unique about Rav Goldberg. Out of all the Rebbeim, the great talmidim chachamim that I've met, Rav Goldberg had this certain joy and smile when he taught Torah. It was like you made his day, like he won the lottery when he got to share some Torah with you. When you sit at the breakfast table, or you run into him in the hallway, or you're sitting in his shiur, and you just had that connection with him, he was just the happiest man in the world. Right? Joy for him, ultimate joy for him, was being able to share Torah with another Jew, with another person. And he wasn't a person who said, I'm doing all of this in this world for Olam Haba. Whatever Olam Haba is. If I said Rav Goldberg, Rav Goldberg, we just got prophecy back, and Hashem, he made a change in the contract. There is no Olam Haba. Sorry, it's canceled. Like, would Rav Goldberg take off his hat and say, well, then forget it. I'm throwing in the towel? No, Rav Goldberg would say, okay, and I'm going to give shiur now. I'm going to continue learning Torah. I'm going to keep teaching Torah, because that's my Olam Haba in this world. That's who I am. That's what he was. It was never about, I'm doing something because I need to get to this place. It's because that is who I am. And I think that's the ultimate, Gan Eden. That's the ultimate Olam Haba, that a person can live their life in this world. They can attach to Torah and Judaism. That's who I am. And that brings me the ultimate pleasure. We should continue learning Torah. We should continue living the values that Rav Goldberg imparted in us, the difference that he made in all of our lives. Anybody who's on the Zoom and many people who are not on the Zoom, they all know what a special personality he was, that he had that joy. And it should be a zchut for him. It should be a zchut for him that this is how we commemorate who he was, that we're sitting together and learning Torah and what Torah means to us. So big yasher koach for everybody coming out on a Sunday morning to learn together in his memory. Yeah, it should be a me'elatz yosher and a zchus for all of us. Yasher koach, everybody.
You should go